Blueprints is a video game that can be most efficiently described with the following combination of genres. It's a board game inspired, tile-laying, strategy and resource management survival and deck-building puzzle game with roguelike elements and a discovery-centric progression loop built around non-linear narrative exploration. Now, that all sounds pretty straightforward to me, but if you're not quite getting it, let me put it another way. It's Outer Wilds meets Inscription by way of Her Story if it were more like Myst, and included elements of both the Zero Escape games and newspaper puzzles. Oh, and also, it's all kind of in the format of the tabletop game Betrayal at House on the Hill. Alright, fine, okay, yeah, I get it. Blueprints is a pretty difficult game to explain concisely, but to give you a general picture of what it's all about, basically, Blueprints is all about building a house by laying down rooms on this big blueprint. See? The name's a pun, each of which is filled with puzzles and secrets you've got to solve in order to reach the mysterious Room 46 right at the end over there. Except, it's a bit harder than you might think, because the house resets every single day and all of your rooms are drawn randomly, which means, in order to succeed, you need to start decoding ciphers, learning an entire fictional geography, uncovering generations of family drama, realizing the fact that the game world is way bigger than you thought it was, solving riddles that span the entire house, and oh my god, these paintings aren't random, they're part of a puzzle, what the fuck? How are there still more puzzles? In case it wasn't obvious, Blueprints is a pretty overwhelming video game. It's got an insane amount of content hidden behind an unassuming facade, some really tricky conundrums, and a very complicated behind-the-scenes story that you need to be keeping track of as well. I truly did not even understand what I was supposed to be doing for maybe the first 10 or so hours of Blueprints, and after getting to the post-game, I'm not sure I ever did. And if you ask me, it's in this near total lack of guidance or supervision that Blueprints is able to create some of the most satisfying reveals and solves that I've ever seen in a video game. Oh, and by the way, in case it needed saying, I'm not going to spoil any of the puzzles, don't worry. Stuff like solving the gallery puzzle, figuring out what the deal with all these stupid clocks is, and opening the garage door, alright, look, that one is more exciting than it sounds, just trust me on that one, all felt great, because in order to reach those milestones, I needed to think outside the box, come to my own conclusions, and fight tooth and nail against a game that absolutely did not want to help me at all. Blueprints is a game that gives you total independence to explore your way and provides no handholds or assistance, and that's why it feels so good to crack the codes and slowly but surely master the mansion, because it comes entirely under your own power. Or, at least, that's what you're supposed to think. In reality, things are a bit more complex than that. As much as I and people like me might want to pat ourselves on the back for being clever and beating Blueprints completely unaided, that ignores the fact that we were actually getting quite a lot of help the entire time, even if we didn't realize it. A huge part of the strength of Blueprints as a supremely satisfying puzzle game is that it presents itself as incredibly opaque and a total information overload, when behind the scenes, the developers have actually put in a huge amount of effort into insulating us players from advanced concepts we're not ready to see yet, building in fail-safes and safety nets to help the game flow more smoothly, and subtly directing us along an invisible progression pathway that feels like something we're navigating through organically, but is actually tightly controlled, all while simultaneously convincing us that none of that is actually happening, and all the progress we achieve is due entirely to our own effort. And this is just as true for the vast majority of games, often especially the ones that we're led to believe are difficult and merciless. Getting to feel independent and flex our agency within a game by expressing ourselves through the mechanics in order to pursue our own path towards victory feels great. But none of that stuff can actually happen without the developers helping us out from behind the scenes. Basically any of your favourite memorable video game moments that felt like they purely came from your own skill and cleverness were, in reality, only possible because the devs gave you the tools you needed to pull it off. Those cool explosive barrel kills in a shooter? Well, guess who put them right next to a big group of enemies? That crazy synergy that totally broke a deck builder wide open? Yep, it's almost as if these things were designed to work together in powerful and unconventional ways for people clever enough to spot these synergies. And that legendary journey of discovery where you found some cool secret location in an open world game, well, the devs wouldn't have put it there if they didn't want you to find it. Without developers nudging us in the direction of the right way to play, altering systems so that they work intuitively in line with their expectations, and giving us the tools we need to express our agency in a game, none of those great, empowering moments of what feel like independent achievement would be able to happen at all. However, because this stuff only works when we feel like our actions are the only thing driving a game, developers need to be a bit subtle when it comes to helping us, balancing the hidden support that makes us feel like the stars of the show with enough of a facade to make it feel like we're not actually getting any help at all. and this is a pretty difficult balance to strike. The road of video gaming history is littered with the corpses of games that were either too heavy-handed and robbed us players of any feeling of personal achievement, or were too light of a touch and sent us wandering blindly into the wilderness, neither of which lead to satisfying gameplay. If we discover that we're being helped too much, then our effort becomes cheapened, whereas if we don't get any help at all, we invariably start calling a game unfair rather than admit we might need a helping hand once in a while. It's a tricky one, and Blueprints is the perfect example of the benefits of developers helping us out from behind the scenes and what happens when they fail to. The moment we're cut off from helpful systems that empower us more than we think, and safety nets that take away the sting of failure, many games completely fall apart, and Blueprints is no different. It has some pretty infamous moments where its secret support network stops working, and players are, for the first time, faced with a game that's no longer fudging things in our favour, leading not to an experience that feels satisfyingly fair, but one that feels random and punitive. Something so jarring that it's enough to drive people away from the game for good. Which, is a shame because most of Blueprints is amazing, but it's indicative of just how tricky this kind of help is. Doing it right means players won't notice, and doing it wrong results in an experience that feels unplayably hostile. This all leads us back to a fundamental problem in game design. Namely, how can developers design challenges that are balanced in our favour and exert enough influence over the way we play to ensure that we don't get lost, or confused, or bored, whilst also making us think that they're not helping us at all, and convince us that any victories we have are entirely our own doing? Well, quite simply, I think it all comes down to trust. We as players need to be suitably convinced that developers are ultimately working in our best interest, and developers need to trust that us players are smart enough to take a hint and play games in the right way without needing constant overbearing supervision. And doing this well requires several clever tricks that serve to massage our gameplay experience into the right shape without ever directly infringing upon the all-important sense of agency and freedom that makes interactive media such a fun art form to explore. One of the simplest but most powerful ways that developers can subtly shape our experience in order to create an impression of freedom and empowerment is by using gating, something that, paradoxically, involves limiting what we can do and what we know. While this might seem obviously counterintuitive, gating off content and sneakily suggesting to players that we go to particular places or do particular things prevents us from making choices that will lead to undesirable gameplay experience, and also limits how much of a game we need to deal with at any one time, preventing us from getting lost or overwhelmed. Open world games, at least well-designed ones, absolutely love doing this. They'll tell you that you can go wherever you want, and that's true, it will just almost always end up being the exact place the developers want you to go. In Skyrim and Breath of the Wild, immediately upon exiting the tutorial, you get pointed at a big cool mountain that you want to go towards, and coincidentally happens to be attached to a big old valley that funnels you towards the first major town and the first big quest chain. In Fallout New Vegas, you're blocked off from beelining straight to the main city by a nest of these bastards, and so instead, you'll choose to go on a big guided tour on the scenic route, which just so happens to introduce you to all the factions and a few easy-to-nab companions, almost as if this route was intended all along. And Subnautica is particularly sneaky about this. Exploring too deep will literally kill you because you've only got limited oxygen and certain depths will crush you to death. So while it feels like you've got a whole ocean to explore, actually progression is extremely gated behind particular bits of gear and different vehicles, preventing you from spoiling yourself by rushing right to the deepest portion of the game right away, while making you feel like all of your exploration choices are organic. Any game with unlocks or a leveling track that gives you access to new mechanics and abilities is also a classic example of gating. We don't tend to think about the fact that we start off with basic abilities and a simple relationship with the mechanics as being a restriction, because unlocking your full mechanical potential is framed as a reward, but that doesn't mean we're not ultimately being held back for our own benefit. If something like the pretty brutal city builder Against the Storm threw the full bevy of mechanics at you right away, from balancing population dynamics to time limits to, yes, harvesting different types of rain, then you'd get totally overwhelmed. So by gating away these complex mechanics until we're ready for them, the game gets the double dip on giving us a sneaky tutorial that we enjoy more because we don't realise we're in one, and being able to reward us for unlocking mechanics that we really should have had access to anyway. Of course, games do need to be careful not to gate us too much. In Final Fantasy XIV, the ability rotations can be pretty demanding, but that's no excuse for sticking most of the classes with a boring 3-hit combo for absolutely ages and denying us access to the actually fun moves until we're nearly max level. Additionally, informational gating is key to the success of the best Discovery games. These titles rely on us working with and making connections between a huge amount of codes and clues, and it's all too easy for us to accidentally drown beneath the sheer amount of info we have to deal with. This is why Outer Wilds, despite presenting a very complex solar system to navigate, actually eases you in very gently. The The only 3 planets you can really explore in any detail right at the start are your homeworld, Brittle Hollow, and Giant's Deep. Everywhere else is gated behind some other discovery, giving us a great feeling of exploration, whilst also ensuring that we can't, say, figure out what's going on with Ash Twin until we've gone through a big old progression chain first. And even then, everyone usually goes to Giant's Deep because that's the planet in the sky you see when you first wake up. Conversely, something like Lorelei and the Laser Eyes throw so many puzzles at you so quickly that it's hard to keep it all in your working memory at the same time, with certain really late game puzzles being shown front and center and basically serving as distracting red herrings for most of the game. Blue Prince, however, uses gating to avoid this issue very well because rather than staring you in the face, many of its late game puzzle elements simply register as background decorations until you find the rooms that put them in some sort of context. To use a relatively early example, you probably won't even think to explore the grounds of the manor themselves because the game cleverly starts you inside the house. It's not until you find your first clues about the apple orchard or the garage door that you have any reason at all to venture outdoors, meaning you won't have to worry about any of these more advanced conundrums until at least after your first few days, helping to streamline the early experience while you're still learning how things work. Of course, sometimes things do go wrong. While gating is a very effective way to control player behaviour, as anyone who's made any sort of game will tell you, us players cannot be predicted, and will often do stupid stuff that hurts our own experience purely by accident and sometimes also on purpose. That's why one of the most underappreciated ways that developers can subtly guide us towards having empowering experiences is not by directly helping us succeed at all, which is often easy to overdo, but by instead mitigating failure. Nothing feels worse in a game than the impression that the mechanics have arbitrarily not done what you want them to, or that you're powerless to manipulate a game's systems. So, by subtly cheating in the player's favour to reflect our intent rather than our actions, games can give us a much smoother feeling experience, leaving us none the wiser, and games have been doing this for literally decades. A classic example of this in action can be seen in Bioshock, where the first few shots that any enemy takes at you will always miss. So, if you fail to spot them, you won't get a frustrating surprise death, but instead the game throws you a secret lifeline, allowing you the satisfying experience of snapping around and killing them. But this sort of design actually goes back to the earliest eras of video gaming. Some of the oldest ways that games can do this are purely mechanical in nature. Something like Coyote Time in platformers gives us a couple of frames of leeway when jumping when we'd otherwise already be in midair, avoiding scenarios where the margin of error is so small that we don't realise we're at fault and blame the game. And many driving games have a variety of steering assist mechanics that subtly prevent you from crashing or otherwise keep you from getting totally stuck, like how GTA cars will almost always magically roll back onto their wheels no matter how bad you crash them. But loss mitigation can go even further than this. Think about randomness in games. Losing out to RNG feels awful because not only is it a failure, it's a kind of failure that denies us a feeling of agency. That's why many games have hidden systems to mitigate the effect or the impact of bad luck, making games feel more skillful, even if all those lucky high rolls go completely unmodified. XCOM, for example, gives you a stacking aim buff whenever you miss a shot on all but the highest difficulties, to ensure that you never hit a streak of quote-unquote unfair wasted attacks, and Baldur's Gate 3 hands out rerolls and chances to roll at advantage like candy, on top of by default using what's called karmic dice, which are basically unfair die skewed towards successes. Relatedly, one of the crucial advantages of loss mitigation is that our brain is capable of justifying it much more readily than an outright buff. In most games, we'd feel insulted and like our decisions didn't matter if the developers made it so that we'd one-shot every enemy regardless of how well we played. But equally, we don't bat an eye at, say, Disco Elysium giving us loads of chances to reroll and loads of contextual buffs when you retry something because they feel earned, even though they're obviously just a way of bailing out players who got unlucky or have bad stats. And outside of the realms of sneaky probability manipulation, many games soften the blow of mistakes by making failure straight up less punishing. In mystery-solving games like The Root Trees Are Dead, Return of the Obra Dinn, and the Golden Idol games, sets of correct answers either get locked in or you'll be told when you're close to getting everything right, meaning that even when you reach an incorrect conclusion, you don't have to go straight back to the drawing board because most of your correct guesses will have locked in, removing them from the equation. Equally, the appeal of the modern roguelike gameplay loop hinges on the idea that you're never given a chance to dwell on failure. Right when you're upset that you died to one of these bullshit rats or this stupid night guy, bam, boom, you're immediately given some fun new toys to play with and things to upgrade, so it feels like you made some progress even when you lost. Blue Prince does this masterfully. While it's very possible to lock yourself out of reaching the mysterious antechamber, Blue Prince almost always offers you some sort of consolation prize that lets you increase your odds tomorrow or save some of your progress. You can put your effort into increasing your daily allowance or permanently upgrading rooms forever, you can invest in tomorrow by drafting stuff like the sauna or the mailroom which give you some free resources tomorrow, or you can just spend days gathering information that you can then use later on. Sure, you might not be able to make the most of finding out how the billiards room puzzle works right away, but you can bring that info with you, and now you you can net yourself some free keys. Nice. That is, however, assuming you know to look for this stuff at all, which brings me on to one last way that games can help us, and it's the one where Blueprints sadly falls short. Beyond mechanical help and subtle restrictiveness, another way that developers can massage our gameplay experience into the way that we expect that's just as important is to use their influence to set the tone for a game, informing the way we perceive the experience and setting our expectations in kind. This is especially true for games that want you to think they're very hard, even when they aren't. Souls-like games give you infinite retries, limitless capacity for grinding, and the ability to double-team bosses that obviously can't handle multiple players, and yet they still go out of their way to convince us players that the odds aren't in our favour. Why? Well, it's because when you think you're on the back foot, not only do your victories feel that much better, but you're much more likely to dig deep into the mechanics and pay close attention to enemy movesets, which is where the games shine. And also, when you expect to die a bunch, you're going to be more willing to take otherwise unfair feeling deaths in good humour. The key thing when it comes to tone setting is shaping a player's cognitive and emotional expectations in such a way so as to obfuscate how much they're being helped. As can be seen in loads of games with big long boss fights that spawn endless extra enemies that seem like they're going to make things tougher, but actually serve as a way to replenish player resources, like how Borderlands always gives you something to kill that isn't the boss in order to get a second wind. Many puzzle games do the same thing, including challenges with so few configurations that they're basically impossible not to solve, and that are pretty much purely intended to teach you a rule or a helpful technique, like how Tunic's instruction manual deciphering and the Witness's introductory puzzles are framed like legitimate obstacles, but are actually just there to teach you how the game works and what to look at first if you get lost or confused. But you never realise this consciously because you're too busy feeling like you're a big smart genius who's almost as clever as Jonathan Blow thinks he is. We almost never really think about it, but many of the smoothest feeling games gone that way because they shape and guide our thought processes in the right direction while tricking us into thinking that we're just smart and happen to be intuitively understanding how the game works. Good comedy games, like the brilliant Skin Deep, never have to spoil the fun by sitting you down and telling you that you're supposed to be funny and that you shouldn't be tryharding it, because the mere presence of banana peels, pepper bombs, and defenestration kills makes doing funny things almost impossible not to do. Also, Claire Obscura Expedition 33, Jesus what a name, never actually tells you that a lot of the fun comes from optimizing the rotations of each character, but it does make abilities that synergize with and drastically increase the effectiveness of each character's basic toolkit weirdly cheap, so you feel like a super genius for figuring out stuff like Mael's stance swapping fire damage mega combo, even though it's basically handed to you. And even in physical games like the social deduction title Blood on the Clock Tower, the basic rule set is very cleverly designed so as to introduce even brand new players to sophisticated concepts like the good team needing to not tell the truth all the time through roles like the Raven Keeper, who needs to trick the demon into killing them in order to gain powerful information, meaning they'll have to pretend to be someone else even though they're on the good guy team. All of these tricks are great because they never actually tell us anything. They just make the correct deductions and the intended frame of mind the psychological path of least resistance, giving us all the freedom and none of the feeling of being talked down to because the game trusts us to get the right idea. Sadly, this is where Blueprints falls down. Despite all the work Blueprints puts in to protect us from failure and gently guide us towards the right puzzles at the right time, its hesitance to teach the player how to think about its weird mansion, its lack of trust in our ability to receive its help without becoming dependent on it, accidentally spoils some people's experience. The complaints that Blueprints is too random and its puzzles are too hard are, excepting some ultra late game stuff, kinda not true. There are actually loads of ways to manipulate the RNG of the game's core drawing mechanic and even duplicate certain rooms, but the game never so much as hints to new players that these systems exist, and so people never go looking for them, even when rooms like the Conservatory are game-warpingly powerful, and the ability to re-roll room draws and ensure that certain room type are more likely to be drawn can really help out with puzzles like powering up the lab. And practically every puzzle in the game has at least two sources for its solution, and most can be intuitive with basic logic without necessarily having all the data. But in wanting players to have a pristine puzzling experience, and not having faith that we can make responsible choices about how hard we want the game to be, Blueprints doesn't tell players any of that, nor does it tell them what to do when they get stuck. In reality, the majority of puzzles in the early to mid-game have a corresponding clue in addition to their intended solution in either one of the various classrooms, in a book from the library, or in a letter in the mailroom, all of which are super cool, immersive ways of dishing out help, if only new players were hinted at that this was even an option. An impossible to miss early game challenge designed to point players towards these tools would give players a fun moment of exploration without compromising their later accomplishments. But in trying so overzealously to preserve our autonomy, Blueprints actually ends up reducing some people's feelings of freedom, because these players don't know what their options even are, and so they assume the game is just being bullshit. Something that stands in stark contrast to the design of, say, Outer Wilds, which gives the player all sorts of reminders for where they can go next and records all relevant puzzle information for them, and as a result, ends up providing a much more accessible feeling of discovery, even if players are given very few genuine moments of doing things entirely unaided, which is kind of the central paradox that I've been on about this entire time. Our relationship with game designers is fundamentally about trust, and nothing demonstrates that this trust needs to go both ways like Blueprints, which I must stress is a really good game, okay? It doesn't make a platformer less enjoyable to know that jump timings are a bit more generous than they appear, or that open world games funnel us towards their best bits of content, because while we're not told about this stuff, it's all done in the name of rewarding our agency rather than curtailing it. And on the same token, it doesn't ruin a puzzle game to tell us players how the mechanics work, in the same way that a shooter ensuring that we can never completely run out of ammo doesn't spoil the action, because the hard and satisfying work of putting those tools to use still falls to the player. All the developers have done is ensure that skillful play is always going to be paid off, and that we never feel like we're wasting our time or at odds with the game, even if that means a little bit of behind-the-scenes deception. When you get right down to it, games are, at their most basic, obstacles that are designed to be overcome. If victory was never a possibility for anyone, then there will be no fun in even trying the challenge, and no satisfaction to be found in the attempt. And, as a result, it's the responsibility of players and game designers alike to work together to create a mutual challenge so convincingly authentic that it can trick both parties, just for a moment, into thinking that we're not basically just working together the whole time. So, when you next find yourself celebrating your victory over a game, spare a thought for the secret support you received in getting there, courtesy of the designers. Whenever you find yourself rejecting help under the assumption that it will make things more satisfying, maybe realise that some assistance is necessary to reach our full potential. And when you think a game is being way too hard, maybe just take a step back and try and think if you've been accidentally ignoring some subconscious hints the whole time. The exception, of course, being this bullshit, quote-unquote, Super Mario game. I mean, what are you even supposed to do? It's bullshit. How the fuck do you get past this guy? I mean, I just run into him and I die, and then if I try running the other way, there's this stupid invisible wall. I've tried literally everything. This game sucks. Fuck you. Hello, and welcome to this, the After the Video segment. How are you doing? Wow, crazy weather we're having today. How are the family? Did you see sporting event recently? No, me neither. Right, there we go. That's the boring small talk out of the way. Let's get to what we're really here for, and that's me telling you all about some cool people that you need to be made aware of. And first up, we've got Jenna Stober. Jenna is one of a rare breed of games analysis people who can actually back up our silly observations about video games with some proper academic credentials. And this is immediately evidenced by the way she manages to elucidate and explain concepts that you've never even considered before, but by the end of each video seem like the most obvious thing in the universe. Did you ever think about why the jump button in Elden Ring is a trap? Or why our fixation on sorting video games into genres can be kind of a bad thing? Or why Mario's nipples are so weird? No? Well, give it like 20 minutes and I can guarantee that you will. Jenna's great. She's charismatic, funny, and exceedingly clever. Please do check her out. But that's not the only person I need to talk about in this segment. Oh no, I also need to introduce you to my wonderful special supporters, who I think without any overstatement whatsoever are more valuable to me than the combined lives of every other human being on planet Earth. Look, I'm sorry, that's just how it is, okay? Do you know why? Well, it's because they are responsible for ensuring this channel still gets to exist. Without them, I would be stuck doing some boring regular job like being a secret agent or a model or something, and I wouldn't be able to do what I love, and that's talk about video games. So please give them a big thank you and consider supporting the channel yourself. If you do, you'll get early access to videos, bonus content that doesn't make it into the public videos, and even your name in the credits. And if you can't give me money directly, well then liking, commenting, subscribing, and sharing and all that good stuff is very much appreciated as well, but not quite as much as my top tier Patreon supporters, who are Ali Wright, Andrew Lebrano, Auna94, Bobby, Brian Natariani, Konstantin Amend, Cosmic360, Daniel Medjes, Dirk Jan Karrenbeld, Digletier, Dis Ellie, Ecton, Edward Franklin Woods, Edwina the Spice Bun, Edwina the Space Bun, that one tripped me up, well done, Eric Woolston, Eugene Bulkin, Fullabaxi, Furious Hulk, Gazcol, Hecate Noah, I Love Quadruple B, Jacob Dillon Riddle, Jinkaloid, Kevin Help Us, Conlove, Kangi, Luke Kokoran, Mace154, Maxim Filipov, Mark Vallant, May Contain Fox-Like Substance, Mika Oi, Michael C, Mike Oxlong, Nate Graff, Oliver Marhofer, Patrick Rumberg, Peter Tomasic, Reddedex, Regal Regex, Revelation, Seslux, Silver Wolfie, Tyler Duncan, Timotheus Beksek, Whimsical Wisp, Zach Brantmeyer, and Chow. Okay, that's it, that's all, and I will see you next time. Bye!